Okay, today we're going to be going over some review questions, and you're going to be creating a reference sheet off of this review. Okay, go ahead and label double number line on your reference sheet. And the first example that we're going to do is 10% of 110. So the first thing that you need to do is create your double number line. I like to just use one number line, but if you'd like to use two, that's fine. Percents on the bottom or the top, I do 0% and then 100%. Okay? And we know that 10% out of 110, so that means out of is your total. Okay? So that means it's 100%. So the 100%, under 100%, you're going to put 110. Then I need to figure out my 10%. So I'm going to put my 10% on my double number line. So how do I I know 10% and 100%, or I know 100%, right? So I want to get to a 10%. So how do I get from 100 to 10? Well, that is just 10 groups of it, right? So 10 times 10 is 100. So I'm going to divide that by 10. So whatever I do to the top, I'm going to do to the bottom to get to my 10%. So 110 divided by 10 will get me 11. So that means my answer here is 10% of 110 is 11. So that is my answer. Let's go on to example 2. Example 2, so we're going to still do double number line, but this time it's going to be 30% of 110. So it's going to be very similar to the one above, but now I need to get to 30%. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to get to 10%. If I can get to 10%, then I can get to 30%. So let's go ahead and do that. So I know that 100% again is 110. So this is from above. And we already know to get from 100 to 10%, we divide by 10. And that means that we divide by 10 here. Just like we did on the top one, and we got 11. So now what I have to do is, in addition, I have to get to 30%. Oops, that just says 3. 30%. So how do I get from this 10% to my 30%? Well, you're going to multiply it by 3. So I need to multiply my top by 3. So then that will give me what my 30% is. So 11 times 3 is 33. Oops. I was erasing it. 33. So go ahead and make sure that you write these double number lines down. There's 2 examples. This one will show the first one just shows one scaling down. And then the second one shows that you scale down to 10% and then you can scale up to 30%. So my answer for this one is 30% of 110 is 33. All right. So now let's go on to, I'm going to go on to the right and put tape diagram. Go ahead and label it tape diagram. Okay. You're going to use tape diagram with 10%. You can do a 5%, but it is very tiny. 20%, 25%, 50%, and 75%. Okay, so those are the different percentages that you can use with tape diagram. You can do 5, but that's just more pieces. So if I'm creating a 10% diagram, I want to break that into 10 groups. 20%, you would only need 5. And for 25%, you can break that up into 4 groups. The same thing you would need for 75, you would break that up into 4 groups because it's 3 groups of 4, right? Or not 3 groups. You would use 4, right? And then you would only use 3 out of it. And then 50% would just be 2 groups, right? All right, so let's go ahead and look at our first example for tape diagrams. So our first example is 25% of 60. So I'm going to look right here. I see 25%. I said that I wanted to create my tape diagram into 4 equal groups. So I'm going to go ahead and create a diagram, and I'm going to split it into, as best as I can, that bar into 4 groups. Okay, and I know that this is out of, right? That means that 60 is my total. So I'm going to show that 60 is my total here. Okay, so if I have 60 as my total, but then I have 4 even groups, what I'm really doing in my head is 60 divided by however many groups I have, which is this 4, right? So 60 divided by 4 is 15. So that's what I put in each group. So 15 plus 15 is 30, plus 15 more is 45, plus 15 more is 60. So 15 times 4 is 60. Okay, so now I need to find 25%. Well, knowing what I know, this is 25%. This is 50, 75, and the total is always 100%. Okay, and I have to figure out 25%, so I'm just going to look at this part here. Well, how much is in 25%? That's just 15. So that means my answer is going to be 25% of 60 is 15. Let's look at example 2 for tape diagrams. All right, so I have 40% of 120. Uh-oh, but I don't see it with here, up in my top part. So, but I know that 40 is in there because I can do multiples. So I could do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, right, with the tens, or I could do 20%, 40%, 60%, right? So I can do multiples of those. So I'm actually going to do the 20% one, right? Because I know I can have 2 groups of 20. So I'm going to go ahead and create my tape diagram, and I'm going to split it into 5 pieces as even as I can, and my total is out of 120. So if my total is 120 and then I have 5 groups, so what I have to do is do 120 divided by 5, which is 24. So this equals 24, so that means that each group is worth 24, or 24 times 5 is 120. All right, so now I need to find 40%. Well, I broke this up into percent, so this is 20%, so this is 20%, 40%, 60%, and 80%. And then the last one, of course, is 100%. Okay, so 40% is this area here, so it's the 20% plus another 20%. So it'd be 24 times 2, or 24 plus 24 is 48. So that means 48 is 40% of 120. Make sure you box your answer so then I can see it easily, or so that you can also see it easily. All right, I would put this on the back. So now we're going to do percent proportion. Go ahead and write this down. Okay, or in this case, you could say that it's ratios, right? So you're creating the ratios of it, okay? Equivalent ratios. So for my example is 60% of 110. Okay, so the first step that I need to do is always create a ratio or a fraction, right, of 60%. So 60% means 60 out of 100. And then I'm going to keep that the same. So this is, remember, the top part is your parts, and always the bottom part is your whole. So On the right side, this says it's out of 110. So that means that 110 is on the bottom. Okay? And I'm trying to figure out 60% out of 110. What is that part? Okay, so I'm trying to figure out the part. So I can't exactly, I can, if you know how to get from here to here, multiply, but it's going to be by a decimal. But what you can do is you can scale it down and then scale it back up. So I'm going to erase this and put my equal sign. So I'm going to think of factors of 100 and 110. What do I mean by that? Is, okay, I know that 100 is 10 times 10. I know 110 is 10 times 11. So the same factors are 10. So that means I want to get it to 10 here. Okay? So I'm going to put my 10 here. So how do I get from 100 to 10? Well, I divide this by 10. So I'm going to divide the top by 10. So then I get 6. Now I got to get to 110. I know that 10 times 11 is 110. So I'm going to multiply 11 times 10 to get to 110. So then that's exactly what I do on top. So 6 times 11 is 66. So that means my answer is 60% of 110 is 66. That's my answer. Let's try another example. Okay, make sure you write this down. It's 12 is 25% of what number? So this is a little bit different, right? So 12 is 25. So this means that it's equal or the part, right? Because this is your part. They are the same. And we're trying to figure out of what number. So that means I'm trying to figure out the total. I don't know the total, okay? So I'm going to create first my fraction of 25%. So that's 25 out of 100. And that is equal to 12 is my part. So I'm going to put my 12 on the top. So 25 is equal to, so I'm going to keep it on the same sides. And we're trying to figure out the total, we said, which is the bottom number, or how much it's out of, right? Okay, so now I need to simplify, and I need to figure out how to simplify this. So I'm going to take this 25 out of 100, and I know that's 1/4. So that I can divide this by 25 on the top and on the bottom. So 25 hundredths equals 1/4. Okay, or 1/4. So now all I have to do is multiply up by 12. So I'm going to multiply the 4 times the 12. So 4 times 12 is 48. So that means that 12 is 25% out of 48. Okay, let's try one last example problem. Make sure you write this down on your reference sheet. So what percent, so this time we're trying to find the percent, is 45 out of 150. And we still want to do percent proportion in this case. Okay, so we know that this is your part. And the 150 is out of 150, so this is your total, or your whole. Ooh. All right, so I'm going to put 45 on the top, out of 150. We don't know my percent. That's what we're trying to figure out, which is that top number here, out of 100, right? It's always out of 100. So I can go from 150 to 100 by multiplying by a decimal, but I want to simplify first. So what are factors of 150 and 100, right? I know that this is 50 times 3, and this is 50 times 2. So I can use 50. So if I put a 50 here, right? How do I get from 150 to 50? I divide by 3. So I'm going to divide this by 3. So 45 divided by 3 is 15. Next, I need to scale up. So I know 50 times 2 is 100. So I'm going to multiply 15 times 2, and that is 30. So it is 30% is 45 out of 150. All right, you still probably have a little bit more room. You can put anything on your formative. We'll be going over the formative, or you'll be getting it depending on what class you're in Monday. So leave this space for you to add stuff. I'm going to be go ahead and give this to the substitute to collect. Make sure your name is on it. So put your name on your reference sheet so then we can pass them back. All right, now is Zern time. So if you finish, go ahead and get on to Zern.